Hi, I'm Tree and this is Stitchless TV. Now today on Stitchless TV we are going to make this pussy bow blouse using our Raglan sleeve pattern, which is available from our Etsy page. And the way that we use it is like a pattern block. Now there's only one piece for the front and the back, and one piece for the Raglan sleeves. Now we've used this pattern for so many of our videos. Now you need to trace off your pattern, and you've got to make a few changes to the pattern in order to make it so you can use it for this pussy bow blouse today. So I'm just going to show you what we did. So first of all, you need to lengthen your sleeve pattern because the sleeve of the Raglan sleeve block stops about there. But the main thing is what you need to do to the front. So I'll show you what I did. So remember, the way that the pattern comes when you trace off your size is like that. Just ignore this bit. So I traced off my size and then I folded it over, and you need to add some sort of button stand. But what you've got to remember is where you fold it is the centre front of your top. But where you fold back your facing needs to be about ½ an inch or 1.5 inches further away from the centre, because when you do the overlap on the buttons and the buttonholes fall down that line. So I folded mine back. So this is when you're doing your pattern, okay? So I folded mine back like that, and then I traced off the neckline, which gets reshaped later anyway, to work out what my facing might be. It actually ended up being a narrow facing like that, and then you press back the seam allowance. But it's good to do a bigger facing, first of all, so you've got something to play with. So does that make sense? So then when you've done that, then you need to cut out 2 with the facing on, and then 1 which is just as it is, which will become the back, and then cut 2 sleeves. Right, the length of my pussy bow is 56 inches, because I've got it doubled, okay? 56 inches is the length, which is 142 centimetres, but you know, it's kind of like a non-specific measurement, as long as it's long enough to tie into a little bow. If you're doing cuffs, you need to cut a little length. So I just cut a length as wide as I wanted my cuffs to be, but you've got to cut it on a fold. Okay, so you fold it like that. So I cut 2 of these to a fold. I also cut a few strips on the cross, and I've treated them like I would bias binding, and I've folded in the edges because they then become this part on the cuff. And it's always a good idea to make them all nice and pressed so you're ready to use them. So you need 2 of those. Now when you've cut everything out, honestly, prepare everything before you start sewing. It's just like cooking. The more you prep, the easier it is. Now the things that need interfacing are the front of that button stand. Okay, so you need to do the front of the button stand. You've got to put interfacing right up to where you fold it. That's an iron-on interfacing that I used there. So I've basically prepared my button stand to the width that I want it to be, pressing back a little bit of a hem. So that was the front. So you've had facing to your front. I pre-folded my pussy bow, which I'm not using interfacing in because I want it to be all floppy. You might want it like around the neck, but I like how this one is. I like it being all relaxed. You also need interfacing on those cuffs. If you're using a thicker fabric, then maybe you can get away with it. So I put the facing all over the cuffs. And then those bits that become the bit that goes around the placket, although it's not really a placket, on the cuffs. And then you're ready to sew. I'm sewing with really slippery fabric today. Now when you sew with slippery fabric, it can seem like you've not cut your stuff out properly. Look, like I could have just laid that on there like that. But because it's on the cross and because it's a slippery fabric, things do get a bit out of shape. So you've got to ease them back into their original shape, and then you'll see that it will fit perfectly. Now this is the front of the raglan sleeve going onto the one of the front pieces of my blouse. Now, I'm very disappointed that I couldn't get my lines to line up perfectly, and I actually lined it up with the line on the red and the pink. But I'm just going to have to let it go. Now, I think it would be nice if we do a French seam today for, I think, all of our seams. So that's what we're going to do. Now ordinarily we put our fabric right sides together, we know that when we sew seams. But if you're doing a French seam, you've got to do the complete opposite. You have to put wrong sides together. So let's see if we can do that. So I'm putting my fabric, wrong sides together, and I have been using these clips recently, which are kind of good. So I'm just going to hold it in place, hopefully, with these clips. They're particularly good when you sew leather. So I'm going to put one at each end, so I know where I'm going. And then maybe one in the middle. Oh, I'm so annoyed about that line. And then one in the middle. Now, we're going to do a really small seam allowance here. But make sure you capture all of the fabric. So what we're going to do, maybe a 2mm seam allowance from the armpit up to the neck. So trim it back to something like that and then press it. So when you press it, you've got to sort of press it in a folded 2D way. And that's also why you trim back the extra seam allowance so that you can definitely get a nice curve there. Now what we're going to do like the width of the sewing foot away, making sure that we've caught all the little stuff inside, all the little seam allowance, going all the way around. And then when you do that, it should look something like that. Okay, and then you give it another press, but do it to all of your raglan sleeve edges. So that's all of the diagonal lines. So that's all of your diagonal lines that are where your sleeves get attached to your front and back pieces. But you also need to do a French seam to the dart. So on the sleeve, on the shoulder, you have a big dart. So you've got to close that dart by putting the fabric. If you're doing French seams, you've got to put it wrong sides together. But if you're just overlocking, then obviously you do right sides together. A lot easier to just overlock, gosh. but it does look nice. So look, so that's a French seamed shoulder dart. Okay, so I've done French seams on all the Raglan sleeves except the two at the back. It looks very nice with the French seams. I also would say you probably should size up because it's taking a bit more seam allowance. Yeah, but it does look nice with French seams. Anyway, we're now at the stage of shaping our neck to how we want it to be, because it is just a pattern block that we use, and it's the same for the front and the back. I'm recovering from the fact that these don't pattern match, and I'm not going to make excuses, but because we used a piece of artwork for the print, it wasn't very easy to pattern match. I just need to tidy up the back a little bit. Mind you, it's not that bad. Maybe I won't. So the back is kind of okay, but coming around the front, so I just need to bring the side of the back, and then I want to drop it a bit at the front. I don't like it being so high. Now when I cut, I'm cutting through the facing, the top fabric. I'm cutting through both layers. Do that there. And just levelling it up on the other side. So it's more of a curve around the neck. Now I'm happy with that. Right, the next thing we're going to do, what is the next thing that we're going to do? We're going to stitch our facings back. Now the bit that we're going to do next is this button stand bit and the facing. We're just going to prepare it for when we add the pussy bow stand-up collar on. So what we're going to do is this. So I'm going to fold it right sides together along the fold line and get it in position, and then just stitch the seam allowance away, coming across to here and stopping there, and then do the same on the other side as well. So this is where all that prepping that you did before comes in handy. So you will have already ironed on your interfacing, and you will have already folded back a small seam allowance, won't you? And then along the folded line, so that's the front facing, yeah? So along the folded line, fold it back in the opposite direction, keep that hem folded, line everything up. So that's basically what we just did, if you want to have a look. So we've just done that, and then when we're ready, then we'll stitch this bit down. But we're going to have to add the, pussy bow collar tie bit now. Before I start showing you how to attach the stand-up collar with the long tie so it becomes the pussy bow, I want to show you this. Now there are many ways you could have attached that pussy bow. You could have not finished this and you know, just stitched it on and bagged out the ends so that they came to there, but I wanted kind of like an overlap bit at the front. So we've done that bit, haven't we? What you need to do, you need to cut in so you can release this bit here like this, because when we put on the stand-up collar part of the long pussy bow, we need something to kind of grab, and we're going to be grabbing that. So I've done it on that side, but I've left this side so I can show you. You do feel a bit nervous, but don't. So what you want to know is, you don't want to see where you've snipped it, okay? So where you snip it, it's sort of like hidden underneath there a little bit. So if I just turn that around, and I can show you that I'm going to snip to that point there. And then when I pop that back again, okay, so that's like that. That's where we did the facing. But look, I've got this bit that I can grab, like that. But before we do that, I want to know where the back is. So I make sure I have a notch that is at the back. So make sure it is actually at the back. So I've got a notch at the back. And now we're going to get our ties. So my fabric's printed onto this double crepe fabric, and it's a polyester double crepe, and it's great, but boy is it slippery. It's really slippery. So I really have got to rely upon lots and lots of notches. But I've been finding these clips, and I'm not trying to sell them because I don't have any to sell, but you know how I don't like using pins? These clips are pretty good. I mean, the only time I've used them before is when I was working with leather, but I think they're really good. So lots of notches to keep track, right? And you will need to bag it out, turn it the wrong way round, stitch up to where it fits around your collar. But that doesn't make sense. I've got to show you, don't I? So what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to line up that centre back with the back of my top, and I'm going to sew it to the point. Do you remember we did the snip? So I'm going to make sure I grab that and stop there. So I'm applying the collar on first. I'm lining up that back notch and trying not to get in the way so that you can see. I'll put one of those little clips there just to hold it, and then trying to stay out of the way without stretching anything, because that's really difficult with this stuff. Without stretching anything, I'm going to start feeding it around and pinning or clipping it in place. And then when you get to that bit that we snipped, okay, make sure you snip it enough. Then you've got to make sure you grab it. Am I grabbing it? So I've got to make sure that I grab it enough and then stop sewing there. Look, can you see that? So I'm going to stop sewing there on that bit that I snipped. Okay, so I've just started at the centre back, and I'm trying to make sure things don't slip. So I'm just feeding my way around the neck. So this is the bit that you really want to see. So that's the front facing there. That's that little bit that we snipped. Okay, so I'm going to just lift it up a little bit, just so I can really see, because I want to go exactly to that point. Oh, but not over it. So hopefully, yeah, that seems fine. So it would be like that. Yeah? When you sew the other side, you have to flop your work over. So now I'm working on the side that has the tie on the top, or the collar on the top. So again, starting at the centre back and being careful. I've got to sew all the way around the neck. Okay, so when I turn them around, it should be just about okay. But we get another opportunity to go close to it, so that's fine. Actually, before we go on to doing the ties, if you are sure that you've sewn this correctly, can I just say that this is the moment to do snips into your curve so that your collar sits well. So you go at right angles into the seam allowance on all the curvy bits. Right, so now we need to start preparing our ties. So we've done loads of notches, lots of notches because it's really slippery. So I'm going to line up that big one first, that notch there, and put a clip. And line up that one. Until I get to the end. Now for the moment what we're going to do is we're going to come and we're going to stop here. Now if you're making this in a cotton or like a taffeta type fabric, it's going to be so much easier, but hopefully this will all be worth it. So I'm not going to go backwards and forwards because I'm going to over sew later on when we do the burrito bit. So just carefully sew all the way down. Now I don't know if you're going to have a point at the end of yours. I thought I probably would. So if you do want a point, do something like this. Stop somewhere and start heading to the fold at an angle. Ooh, without stretching. And backwards and forwards. Ooh. I must stop trying it on. So we've got that attached and we've got these bagged out bits, but we're not going to turn them the right way round yet because we are going to do a kind of burrito thing. Burrito. Sorry, that's a really bad American accent, I'm really sorry. Okay. So we've got to fold back all of our stuff and make it thin enough to fit inside the neck and let us access the other side of that neck seam. Also, it's very important that we particularly for me, gosh, that we line up our notches. So I know that that's my back notch. So I'll put a little clip there. And then I've got a series of other notches to line up, so I'm just going to do those. So you need to see that actually, let's show you that. So that's that bit, that's that very important bit, which is where the front is, where the little step there of the button stand at the front. So for that bit I'm going to pay a lot of attention. Right, so if you're happy that everything is all in place nicely, I recommend that you do actually sew on the side where you can see the previous stitches, if you can. So you can't, well, you can sew all the way to the back, but if you do, you've got to leave a gap to be able to turn the blouse through. So I'd say stay about, I don't know, 2 inches away from the centre back. Also make sure when you do this that you do stay on that line, because otherwise you might accidentally end up sewing your, bits of your blouse. So that'd be a bit of a disaster. So that's my special bit. So I've got to get right. Now you can always go in again afterwards if you haven't caught something. So you can go backwards and forwards there, but I've just over sewn it because I'm really eager to have a look. I thought you might like to see me do this. So then you just ease out your blouse, hoping that it isn't accidentally attached anywhere. Okay. And then actually, how do we get out that bit? Give it a good old shake and a pull. Right. Well, that's pretty good. So obviously it needs a press. By us doing that burrito method, so I haven't done any hand sewing yet, I was able to go up to, on either side, about that much. So I only need to hand sew this tiny little bit. And I think it really does give, it does give a professional finish. So now we put our fabric right sides together. Now that's the armpit. That goes down to the hem. And then that's the inside seam of the sleeve. Now you've just got to sew that up. You can do it by a French seam or overlock it and sew it. It's up to you. So when you've done that, you end up with this, which is pretty good. Now you might want to put some interfacing inside the collar and the ties. I wanted it to be very relaxed like this one. So I haven't put anything in there, and it actually probably would be easier to sew if you stabilised it with a bit of interfacing too. So those little bits that I was talking about, the bits that you have to catch, are these bits here. Because if I was to stop there, then my button stand would sort of be swinging. It wouldn't sit, well, it wouldn't be swinging, but it wouldn't sit properly. But it's nothing at all to capture kind of about half, well, it's not quite half, a third of the button stand, so that when it crosses over here, for when you do it up, it looks right. Can't see there, can you? So it looks right. So I'm going to take it off so you can see the whole of it. So when you've stitched up your side seams, closed your side seams and closed the sleeve seams, you should end up with something that looks like this. And then what you need to do is you need to hem the bottom, and if you're going to stop at this point and wear it as a kind of jackety thing, then hem the sleeves. So I've hemmed the bottom. I did not enjoy hemming the bottom, I have to say. Can I really emphasise, if you're going to make this blouse, don't make it in a really tricky fabric, okay? Because it makes it really tricky. Let's have a look at the back. With the Raglan sleeve pattern that we have, we do it so it goes straight across. Because, I don't know, I'm a bit weird. I like it the way it dips down at the bottom. But you may want to curve it. So you might want to do a curved hem, which is how you're supposed to do it when you have like a flouncy shirt. So we got it straight across. There's our hem. I used a machine hem. And so you will hem the sleeves if you want to stop at your blouse being like this. So there we go. Pussy Bow Blouse in our really amazing and special okay, not okay printed fabric that's created by somebody called Lucy Barrett. Go and have a look at her work on Instagram because it's quite... Now, I'm actually going to go off and do some cuffs, but I'm not sure I'm going to film it. But I might take a load of pictures of the step by step. So if you want to see how we do the opening at the back and then with the cuffs on the bottom, comment below, and then maybe I can share photos of the step by step of how I did it afterwards. Now, if you want this to be Pussy Bow Blouse that does up, then obviously you're going to have to do buttonholes. And we have got a tutorial on how to do buttonholes, but there are hundreds of them. Oh my goodness, I almost forgot to put it on. So there we go, bit nice and really easy and suitable for a beginner, so long as you don't use like a really slippery fabric. Use a cotton lawn, a lightweight silk taffeta or a habitai silk maybe. Yeah, keep it simple. So I'm wearing mine in a relaxed way like that, but it is a pussy bow tie. Really, I'm so bad at tying them. How can I be so bad at tying a bow? I'm supposed to be good with my hands. Oof. Pussy bow blouse complete. Well, if you want it to be complete, we're going to add cuffs on and possibly buttonholes. But you can stop at this stage, remember. If you do decide to do a curved hem, you're probably going to have to make a piece of bias binding with your fabric, or just use regular bias binding and attach it on and then do your hem, because you need to be able to go around a curve, you see. So, thank you so much for watching. If you decide to make a pussy bow blouse, whether you use our Raglan sleeve pattern from Etsy or not, I would really like to see them on the Facebook page or Instagram, Stitchless TV. See you again very soon. Look at our other projects that we make with our Raglan sleeve pattern. Bye. Oh, and if you're interested in this fabric, sorry, I will go soon. If you're interested in this fabric, message me and I'll tell you where you can get it from, maybe. Haven't decided if we're selling it yet. Bye.